Hi everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this short vlog series, we're covering our week in Norway in December 2024 to January 2025. We spent some time in both Oslo and Tromso over New Year with our friends and had a wonderful time. Last week I spoke about our time in Oslo, and in today's video I'll cover our time in Tromso. We decided to book this trip as we love a winter holiday and to be able to get away and enjoy the snow. If you've visited our channel before, you'll have seen that we've previously visited Lapland and Iceland. For our next trip, we initially looked at a ski holiday, but were put off by the cost. We also looked at heading back to Lapland, but eventually settled on Norway for somewhere new and different. We wanted to head to the far north to guarantee snow and to try and see the Northern Lights, which pointed us to Tromso, somewhere we've considered visiting before. Tromso is a wonderful destination, a lovely city in the far north of Norway, with almost guaranteed snow over the winter, the opportunity to see the Northern Lights, to go whale watching and to enjoy all sorts of different activities. There are some direct flights from the UK, but the budget airlines don't always release their schedules a year in advance. Given we were visiting over New Year and new accommodation would book up quickly, we wanted to book early and nail down our travel dates. So we opted to travel via Oslo with Scandinavian and Norwegian airlines, both of whom had their flights available just under a year in advance. We settled on 2 nights in Oslo, flying out on the 28th of December with Scandinavian Airlines, before then flying up to Tromso on the 30th with Norwegian Airlines. We enjoyed 4 nights in Tromso over New Year and then flew back to Oslo for another 2 nights, arriving home in Manchester on the 5th of January. I talked about our time in Oslo in last week's vlog, so I'll cover Tromso now. We arrived in Tromso on Monday afternoon after a pretty smooth flight up from Oslo. We did have a bit of a delay due to the weather, snow and ice in Tromso, but arrived safely and Norwegian Airlines were great. The airport in Tromso is just a 10-minute drive from the city centre, so it's fairly easy to get into the city itself. You can get a taxi or there's an airport shuttle bus that runs into the city at really regular intervals. For us though, we had a timing issue in that we couldn't check into our Airbnb until 4 p.m, but landed at 1 p.m. We had 4 suitcases with us, so we decided we'd get the bus into the city, stock up on groceries and then head up to our Airbnb. The shuttle bus or coach cost us around £20 for the 4 of us and only took 10 minutes or so to get in. We hopped off on Storgata, which is one of the main streets in the city centre, then stocked up at the Eurospa, which is a great option if you're self-catering like we were. Our plan was then to get on the bus to take us up to our Airbnb on the edge of the city. It was only about a 15-minute walk away, but the snow was pretty deep and still coming down, and it was an uphill walk, so wasn't really feasible with luggage. We downloaded the Svipper app, which was great for navigating the buses around the city and booking tickets, and found a bus that would get us up there. Unfortunately, we then found that buses weren't keen on tourists with luggage and actually drove off before we could get on, which was disappointing to say the least. So we then had to try and get taxis, which was tricky not knowing the city and with loads of luggage, so we ended up having to go a few people at a time. All in all, it was an expensive and stressful hour or so, but we got there. We later discovered the Taxi Fix app, which was just like a local Uber service. This worked really well for the rest of the trip, so would highly recommend downloading this to help with any taxis that you need. We'd opted for an Airbnb because we were travelling with friends and wanted to stay together over New Year. There are plenty of hotel options in the city, but none that fit what we wanted. I've saved the link to our apartment in the description below. It was a newly built apartment on the edge of the city, around a 15-minute walk into the centre. Not bad at all, but keep in mind that it's on a hill and in the snow it can be hard work, but equally a beautiful and fun walk. The apartment was split over 2 floors. The first floor had 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. 3 of these had double beds and then the 4th had 2 singles. There was a nice big entryway which was really handy for kicking off all of your snow gear, and then a staircase up to the 2nd floor which was all open plan with a modern kitchen and living area. The view out of here is amazing and looks across the city and the water up to the mountains and the gondola, which was also the focal point for the fireworks on New Year's Eve, so it was absolutely perfect. The living area had a big sofa and TV, and there was a Christmas tree up, which was a really nice touch. There's also a balcony you can go out onto if you want, although we didn't make much use of this given how much snow there was. Off of the kitchen there's a 2nd bathroom and then the 5th bedroom, also with a double bed, meaning the apartment can comfortably sleep 10 people, so perfect for our group of 8. The apartment was lovely and clean, well maintained, and one of the best Airbnbs we've ever stayed in. The hosts were really responsive and helpful, so we would highly recommend staying here. So having finally arrived, we were able to let ourselves in, get unpacked and settled, and then we booked an evening Northern Lights tour. We were a little bit short on time, so booked a taxi using the app to take us down into the city again, had a quick McDonald's dinner at what's advertised as the world's most northern one, and then headed to the meeting point for our tour. We'd booked the tour through Get Your Guide, and it was for a Northern Lights tour with a free professional portrait with amazing Arctic tours. I've left a link in the description below this video. On our past winter trips to Lapland and Iceland, we desperately wanted to see the Northern Lights but had never booked an excursion. We'd seen glimpses of the lights in the past but not had a great deal of luck, so on this trip we decided we'd go for a tour to try and improve our chances. We did a ton of research and there's loads of different options which range from coach tours that take you to a fixed spot up to a bespoke private tour that can go wherever your chances are best. Obviously this costs more though, so we went for something in the middle, where we were on a small minibus in a small group of around 16 people that went wherever the lights were strongest. We felt this was a good compromise between cost and giving us the best chance of seeing the lights. The tour came to around £575 for a family of 4, so not especially cheap, but we thought it was worthwhile given we'd not done one before. The tour started at 6 p.m, leaving from the Tromsø tourist shop down by the harbour. There was a large group of people that were then divided out across 3 minibuses with 16 people in each. The buses were comfy enough and had overhead space for bags. Our tour was scheduled to last 6 hours, but our guide explained it would likely run much later due to cloud coverage around Tromsø, so we had to head quite a long way out of the city to try and find the best spots to view the lights. You're told to bring your passport as you can sometimes cross over into Sweden. We headed south though in search of the lights, and after a couple of hours driving we pulled over and managed to get a decent view of them out in the countryside. It didn't last long though before the clouds came over again, but we did get some good pictures. This is where we had our pictures taken by our guide before we hopped back in to try and find a better spot. We made a couple of stops during the night. The last one was a longer stop where our guide made a fire and we enjoyed warm berry juice and s'mores. This was basically in a lay-by, but with all of the snow and no traffic you couldn't really tell. The kids played in the snow and we carried on looking for the lights. It was wonderful to see all of the stars in this clear sky as well. We didn't have a great deal of luck with the weather, which was unfortunate but obviously couldn't be helped. It was quite a journey back and we eventually reached Tromsø a little after 3 a.m, so a marathon 9-hour excursion, and most people ended up sleeping on the way back. Fortunately, our guide was kind enough to drop us at our apartment, which was really appreciated, and he was really friendly and informative throughout the tour. He made a couple of bathroom stops during the tour and we were very comfortable. Would we recommend it? Yes and no. I think it really depends on how well you see the lights on the night. We saw them a little bit, but not as great as it could have been, so we were on the fence. If we'd have seen them all across the sky, I can imagine we'd be more enthusiastic. It just comes down to the luck of the draw. Our guides were brilliant though, sharing information with other guides, and they track the weather and have cameras set up across the region so they can check which spots have the best chances. So they really do put you in the best position to try and see the Northern Lights. We were just a little bit unlucky with the weather that night. The driver seemed as tired as most people on the bus on the drive back though too, which for someone who can't sleep in cars made me really nervous to see. So after a really late night, we took it easy on our first full day in Tromsø, which was also New Year's Eve. We had a long lie-in, some breakfast and slowly got ready before wandering down into the city to explore. It really is a gorgeous walk down the hill with the views of the mountains, and the kids loved playing in the snow, which was piled high at the sides of the street. The city centre itself is very small. Tromsø sits on an island in the middle of the fjord, with the city centre in the bottom right of the island. It's very easy to explore on foot, and we wandered along the harbour front and along the main streets. We stopped for lunch at the mini Christmas market next to the Tromsø tourist shop where we'd been the night before. There was only a few small stalls, but it has a nice selection of food and treats. We did a bit more shopping around town. We saw a cathedral, not the famous Arctic cathedral though, which is over the bridge. And we tried to get a drink at Rakuten Bar, dubbed the smallest bar in the world, but this was closed. On the way back, we stopped at the supermarket again to get some food for dinner. We'd also planned to buy some drinks for New Year's Eve, but found that they stopped selling alcohol after 3 p.m. So we'd missed the cut-off, which meant it was a dry New Year's Eve for us. The alcohol laws are quite strict in Norway in terms of selling times, etc. So this is definitely worth looking up in advance so you don't run into the same issues that we did. Not what we expected, but we still had a really great night together and loved the fireworks at midnight up on the mountain, and to be honest, all across the city. The sky was lit up with fireworks. We also found it was a great night for the Northern Lights, and they were visible dancing across the sky for most of the night. We got some brilliant views from just outside of our apartment, so it goes to show that you don't have to pay for a tour necessarily, you can just get lucky, as the views we had of the lights this night were so much better than the night before when we'd paid for the excursion. We spent hours just running outside and looking out of the windows of our apartment to see the Northern Lights on New Year's Eve. It was an absolutely magical night. For New Year's Day, we decided we'd head off to explore the mainland across the bridge. This is where the Fjellheisen gondola is located, as well as the Arctic Cathedral. We wandered down into the city and hopped on a bus which took us over the bridge and dropped us pretty much right at the bottom of the gondola. The bus routes were really easy to navigate using the Svipper app and the maps at the bus stop, and we found that the tourist attractions were really clearly marked. The bus was also decent value too, at around £2 per person per journey. It only took around 10 minutes on the bus, but we were greeted by a massive queue at the gondola. This took around half an hour and we bought tickets as we stood in line. There was no way to pre-book to skip the line either, so a little frustrating. The gondola itself cost around £75 for a family of 4 and whisks you to the top of the mountain. At the top there's a little visitor centre with a shop, cafe and viewing area where you can look back down on Tromsø and the mountains around. It really is a brilliant view, and it's apparently a great spot to see the Northern Lights at night too. The cafe was absolutely packed though, so they'd limited the menu to just snacks. We eventually got a table and enjoyed some hot chocolate and cakes, and then headed back outside so the kids could play in the snow. From here you can carry on and hike across the mountain tops, but it was incredibly cold, so we enjoyed our time taking in the views and then headed back down again. At the bottom, it's then just a short bus ride to the Arctic Cathedral. However, there wasn't a bus scheduled for a while, so we just slowly wandered across as it was only around a 15-minute walk. Entry to the cathedral was around £5 per person. A few of us had a quick look inside while the rest played outside in the snow, and we got some lovely photos. It really is a beautiful building. Then we hopped back on a bus across the bridge to the city for some dinner. We opted for Pepe's Pizza for something easy. The food was fine, nothing amazing, but decent value at around £70 per family, particularly compared to some of the meals we paid for on this trip. There was just enough time for a quick wander to Porten til Ishavet, which is a beautiful art installation by the water which perfectly frames the cathedral and the bridge behind it. It's worth a stop here as you get some amazing photos. We then made a slow walk back to our apartment for the night. For our last day, we'd booked a whale watching trip. Tromsø is a fantastic whale watching destination, with the opportunity to see humpback whales and orcas among many others. We'd wanted to see orcas for a while and had only seen them briefly on our Alaska trip, so wanted to take the opportunity while we were here. The location of the whales each winter depends on the herring that they come here to feed on. Apparently years ago this used to be right around Tromsø, to the point that you didn't even need to go out on a boat to spot them. But recently it's been moving north, and the past few years the fish and whales have been a couple of hours north of Tromsø. This means it's basically a full day excursion. There are a couple of tour operators that run trips from Tromsø, and these can get booked up quickly. We found availability to be limited when we booked a few months out, but we managed to get the tour we wanted with Brim Explorer. We booked through Viator, and I've left a link in the description below. All of the tours are very similar. The main operators offer a large boat or catamaran. We liked the look of the Brim Explorer as they had silent or electric boats that looked to be a decent size, comfortable and had some good reviews. You can also take tours on smaller boats, but we wanted something a bit more comfortable. Most of the tours though are fairly similar and similarly priced. Ours came to around £460 for the 4 of us. The tour left from the harbour, again near the tourist shop, at 9 AM. We got there for around 8:30 and found that they were already boarding, but we still managed to get a decent seat. Inside it was all table seating, very comfortable with large windows so everyone had a decent view. You could go and sit upstairs outside, but it was cold and windy so we never ventured up there. You could also then go outside on the main deck. There's real space all the way around the boat, meaning that when you're out looking at the whales, there's room for everyone. There were a couple of toilets which were kept clean and well kept, a little snack bar where they sold cookies, hot drinks and cold drinks, and then later on soup as well. We set off around 9 AM and it broadly takes about 3 hours to sail up through the fjords to the whale feeding grounds. We then got around 90 minutes up there around the whales before we headed back. so it was about an 8-hour trip in all. On the way to and from the feeding grounds, we had a couple of talks from the guides on board. They told us all about the different whales we could see and the surrounding area and landscapes. We could pop out on deck and enjoy the views at any point and get some pictures as the scenery was just stunning. However, it was painfully cold, a bit snowy and very windy, so you didn't really want to be out there long. A word of warning, the water can get very choppy. Generally, it wasn't too bad, but on the way out there was around half an hour where we were sailing into the waves and were less protected, where it was pretty uncomfortable and a lot of people on board were unwell. It did settle back down and wasn't so bad on the way back, but be warned to bring sick bags, anti-sickness tablets, etc. When we reached the whales themselves, it was absolutely brilliant. There were whales in almost every direction, and we saw humpbacks, fin whales and a couple of orcas. We even saw a humpback fully breach and jump out of the water, which was amazing. Everybody is out on deck and the guides tell you which directions the whales can be seen, so it's very easy to spot them. Again, it does get very cold, so bring all of your layers, gloves, hats, etc. as you're outside for quite a while, although you can of course head inside whenever you want. At one point we were facing into the snow and wind, so it can be a bit challenging to get some decent pictures. We brought our camera and zoom lens, but found with the spray and low light it didn't work especially well. Still, we did get some decent videos and photos, and all had an amazing time. This was probably the best thing we did in Tromsø, so we'd really recommend braving the weather and getting out here. We'd also really recommend Brim Explorer, as it was a well organised, excellent tour. Back in Tromsø, we headed straight over to the Magic Ice Bar, which is right next to the dock. This is an indoor bar made of sculpted ice, so quite a cool novelty. You do have to pay to enter, but you get a drink included. This came to around £45 for the 4 of us. Not terrible when you consider the price of a drink here. It's fairly small inside, but had some really cool sculptures. It's obviously very cold and only has a couple of tables, so not that comfortable, but it was nice to pop in and have a drink and try something different. For dinner, we'd planned to head to the Hard Rock Cafe, but that was fully booked all night, so instead we landed on a place called Asian House, which served great Chinese and Thai food, and we had a lovely meal here for around £80 for the 4 of us, before wandering back to the apartment. The next day, it was unfortunately time to head back off to Oslo. We had a couple of hours to kill in the city between our checkout time and our flight. We got a taxi into the centre and planned to leave our luggage at the tourist shop, but their luggage storage was full, so we ended up at the Northern Lights gift shop, who were very friendly and stored our luggage for a few hours. I think it cost around £10 a bag, so not that cheap, but we didn't have much choice. It meant that we could relax and enjoy our last few hours in Tromsø and do some shopping, and then we had a quick lunch in McDonald's to see us through. We caught the airport shuttle bus back up to the airport, picking us up from Storgata for around £20 for the 4 of us. Tromsø airport was very nice, small but easy to navigate, and a couple of decent dining options. Again, we had another delay because of the snow, but it wasn't too bad and had a comfortable flight back down to Oslo. We enjoyed an amazing time in Tromsø and would really recommend it for a winter break. We had 4 nights here and we were debating how long would have been ideal. I think maybe 1 more night would have been nice. We'd heard about a park in the middle of the island which was apparently great for sledging, so it would have been nice to have another day to play in the snow. You could probably even fill a couple of more days here if you're happy to pay for the excursions. There's a lot on offer that we read through when doing our research, like the snow park, reindeer and husky sledding, ice fishing, cross-country skiing and snowmobiling. Then in the city there's the Polaria Aquarium, the Polar Museum and the Troll Museum, all which we didn't get to. So there's absolutely loads here to keep you occupied for a week even if you wanted to stay a little longer. Quickly touching on practical things. Firstly, in terms of weather, yes, of course, it was very cold. I think it maybe averaged around -7 degrees while we were here. So not terrible, but it can get a lot colder. We basically just bring layers. Thermal layers, jogging bottoms and fleecy tops, and then ski trousers and jackets. We always pack extra layers just in case. Then we have several pairs of socks, including a thick wool pair and ski boots to keep our feet warm and dry. Then gloves, including liner gloves to go underneath, scarves, snoods, hats, and we always pack hand warmers, as these are great for when it's bitingly cold. So with all of this, it means you end up taking quite a lot of luggage, so be prepared for that. The locals cope very well with the snow. Roads are kept clear and cars have studded tyres. We brought grips for our boots, as we'd read this was advised, but you can't wear these inside as it damages the floor, so we didn't end up actually wearing these very much at all. The airports generally work very well and cope with the snow much better than in the UK, but inevitably there are some delays due to the volume of snow that falls, so just be ready for that. Overall, it was just a really lovely place to visit, incredibly beautiful and such a friendly place. So that covers our time in Tromsø and completes this short vlog series. If there's anything you want to ask about our trip, then just let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, then please give it a like, as it really does make a huge difference to the channel. Our next vlog series will cover our trip to Thailand coming up soon, so please make sure to subscribe to our channel to catch that. Thank you all so much for watching.